See that lone pine up on that hill over there? What are we actually doing right now? The kids are just wild out there. They're wild. But they're having a good time, you know? They're having a good time. This is Untamed Unbroken, the Adventurer's Guide, and I'm your host, Blake Bredesen. Welcome back to Untamed Unbroken. Today, we are talking tent camping, RV camping, advantages and disadvantages of both, maybe a few tips in there, and who tent camping is for, who RV camping is for in general. This could be the same person. Example, case in point, is me. I love both, and for various reasons to do both. Tent camping, RV camping, they both offer unique experiences, catering to different preferences and needs. As I've said, I do both, and it's for different trips. If I'm going by myself, typically just going to use a tent. If I'm going with the family, we're at a campground, we're bringing our travel trailer. And so when I say RV, I mean anywhere from pop-ups to travel trailers to motorhomes, all of that stuff. Fifth wheels, doesn't matter, okay? It's a recreational vehicle versus the tent camping, all right? Let's begin with tent camping. The advantages of tent camping. Deeper connection with nature. It's going to allow for a more immersive experience. You get to spend more time in the outdoors because you're not just going to be spending a ton of time in the tent. I can guarantee that. Maybe if it's a heavy rain, you're spending a bunch of time in the tent. Or maybe you have a little shelter, tent shelter, tarp shelter set up outside for when it is raining. But you're going to be immersed outside in the elements. So whatever those temperatures are, you're going to be feeling them no matter what. It might be a little warmer in the tent, but you're going to be feeling them. And so you got to prepare yourself for that. That can be an advantage and a disadvantage depending on what you're looking for. But it does give you that opportunity to appreciate the sights and sounds and sensations of the outdoors, which is a big deal for a lot of people. Number two, the affordability. This is probably the biggest one. Tent camping is way more budget friendly than an RV, even an old RV like ours. We have a 1999 30-foot travel trailer, no bump outs. It's old, but it's in good condition, and it works great for our family. But we still paid $6,500 for it a few years ago. And, so but you could be spending tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars on an RV if you want to. Motorhomes, don't even get into those in the price range. But tent camping, way more affordable. You can go to Walmart and get a tent, Fleet Farm, get a tent. I have a $100 tent that I use for most of my backpacking trips. I don't have anything fancy. Like $100, $150, you can get a super nice tent especially just for yourself or one or two people. So I have that one. I have a smaller tent for backpacking. I have a little bit bigger tent, a 10 by 12 tent for when we go family camping or when I bring my daughter somewhere and we're just, pulling the vehicle right up to our campsite, whether it's at a campground or not. A bigger tent for that just provides a little bit more comfort, a little more luxury. You can get away with some more stuff, packing. So there's various styles of tent camping as well as RV camping. But affordability in general, tent camping, hands down, way lower investment. You don't have the maintenance of an RV and minimal initial investment. The gear is way cheaper. Number three, and I know I said affordability is probably the biggest thing, but flexibility. Flexibility of location. You can pitch a tent pretty much anywhere. Various terrains, various areas. RVs, you're only really looking at campgrounds or a nice flat area somewhere that you can park it. So tenting, you can go to those campgrounds still. You can do that trip. You can put it in someone's backyard or on someone's back 40. You can go do a wilderness trip. And then anything in between there. So tent camping, just being able to pitch them anywhere, a lot more versatile. You can throw one in your backpack if you want that lighter, ultralight side of things, or you can throw a bigger one in your car and go wherever your car will take you. Another advantage is just minimal environmental impact. Tent camping typically has a lower environmental footprint compared to RV camping. Number 5, simplified living. Encourages a simpler way of living. You disconnect from that technology. You disconnect from some of those amenities and luxuries of the real world. And I feel like it just allows you to get a nice breath of fresh air. So those are some of the big advantages of tent camping. I will note, if you are tent camping, know how to repair it in case of an emergency. You tear it, you can repair it. Disadvantages of the old tent camping: lacks amenities. It lacks those comforts and conveniences of home, like climate control, air conditioning, heating, your own bathroom, storage space. You don't have those things. You are, at most, maybe your biggest comfort thing is you're at a campground, you brought a bigger tent, and you have a nice air mattress that you set up. Maybe you even throw a little foam mattress topper on there, which, mind you, can be very, very comfortable if you're in a campground. You can do those things. But typically, you're on a pad, sleeping pad, or maybe a cot of some sort, just depending on what kind of trip you're doing. And then you're sleeping with blankets or a sleeping bag. Again, depending on what trip you're doing. If I'm car camping, or when I say car camping, I mean tent camping where you drive up to your campsite. So you're allowed to just bring more gear, more stuff. We bring an air mattress. Or if I'm not bringing an air mattress, I'm bringing blankets probably instead of a sleeping bag. Just in general, I sleep better with blankets versus a sleeping bag. Another disadvantage is just exposure to the elements. Like I had said before, you're in those elements: rain, wind, extreme temperatures, which does have an impact on comfort. For example, if you go to the Boundary Waters, you have your tent set up, or maybe your whatever kind of sleeping arrangement you have. A lot of people will use tents. Some people use hammocks. Some people will set up a tarp shelter and they sleep on the ground with their sleeping pad or whatever. What we like to do is set up a tarp, so when it does rain, because it's not a matter of if it's going to rain, it's just when it is going to rain. I don't know if I've ever done a Boundary Waters trip where it didn't rain at least one time. Anyways, you can have that tarp set up, get you out of the rain a little bit, but it's still open air. You still have to deal with the temperatures. You don't have those comforts of just escaping into an RV. That could be a disadvantage, but that also depends on what you're looking for. Setup and takedown. This one, to me, is a big disadvantage. The setup and takedown. Takes longer to set up a tent. Now, I get it. Some tents these days are like a pop-up tent. They're super sweet, super easy. And then the takedown is also super, super nice and easy. So maybe some of the technology in these style of tents, if you're still going super lightweight, you're not going to have this advantage, not really, of the pop-up simplicity. But just the pitching a tent, taking it down, it does take some time and some effort. And when it's raining and you have to do that, it really does suck. It's not fun. So there's that part. And then when you take it down, if it's wet at all, when you get back home, you're likely setting it up again to let it dry out. Another disadvantage of tent camping is just limited space. You have limited space within a tent. Even if you're camping at a campground or you drove up to your campsite, you have a bigger tent. Some of those can be pretty roomy. but generally still limited compared to what an RV is going to offer you. Another disadvantage is just packing, I guess, in general. In an RV, you can just throw stuff in. It doesn't have to necessarily be super organized. If you are just driving an SUV or a car or a truck and you're camping with a tent, you got to have your stuff together a little bit neater, at least on the way there. Another disadvantage to tent camping would be wildlife encounters. Campers in tents are they're more vulnerable when it comes to wildlife. So adhere to certain safety practices such as proper food storage and just be respectful towards wildlife. You don't want any critters wandering up on you because you left a bunch of garbage out and they're sniffing around. Let's move to RV camping advantages and disadvantages. Number one, comfort, convenience, the luxuries. You get the amenities, you get a comfortable bed, you get heating, air conditioning, you get a bathroom a lot of times, with running water if you're hooked up to water and electric. Storage space, you have all of that stuff. I just talked about how we literally will take clothes still on the hanger and just bring it out and hang it up in the little mini closet that we have in our camper. Like Danny, she'll take her half, I'll take my half, and just hang up the shirts. It's so easy. Throw a couple things in a packing cube or whatever and throw that in, and you're good to go. So that is a big advantage. The other side of that comfort and convenience, right, we'll get into that, is the fact that you have to tow it. You have to tow something. That to me is a disadvantage. It's so much easier driving without towing anything. Goes without saying, right? But towing that and the fuel costs that go along with towing something aren't always the greatest. But you do get a certain mobility and flexibility with RVs. For instance, you're traveling between destinations without sacrificing the comfort. So big road trips, you go on a 2,000-mile road trip for a couple months or a month or whatever. And each campground that you go to, each camping site you go to, you still have all of these amenities, making it like you're just a mobile home on wheels, right? Though you're pulling your home behind your truck or you're driving it if you're in a motorhome. That part is super nice. It doesn't have quite the versatility as a tent that you can literally do any type of camping with, whether that's dispersed camping or wilderness camping, but it does allow you to just bring those creature comforts with you and strike a balance between getting immersed in the outdoors, but still having some comforts from home, including a really, really good night's sleep, which makes for a better experience. This is my personal choice with you when you have kids, is the RV. Depends on your experience that you're going for. The third big advantage here with RV camping is the weather. If it's crappy weather, you can just go into your RV, or if you have a nice awning, you hunker under that. Awning's a lot easier to set up than a tarp, for sure. But just being able to escape and go in your camper when it's crappy weather, raining out or thunderstorm or something like that, you have a place to go to that gets you out of the elements a little bit. Now, storms in general, both of these, camping, be aware. Storms in general, especially when it gets to severe weather, be aware of your surroundings and what's going on. You still don't want to be camping under any dead trees or dead limbs that could fall in high winds or anything like that. Enhanced security is another benefit. You have a secure and enclosed living space. Our camper has 2 doors, one in the back, one in the front or towards the front, but you can lock them. They have literal deadbolts that you can lock. And when you go somewhere or do something, you leave the campground or you leave your campsite, you can lock up your camper, keep all your valuables in there. That's nice. You're better protected from wildlife, right? Like when you're sleeping, you don't have to worry. Really, you don't have to worry about bears coming into your camper. Has it been done? I don't know. Probably. But it's not as big of a worry as tent camping. And I've talked about the whole bear aware thing in another episode and steps you can do, especially in the wilderness, to kind of minimize the dangers as best you can. And last but not least, RVs are family friendly. Families of all sizes. So we have it's big because it's 30 feet long, but there's no bump outs. We have situated in the front is up to a queen size bed. We actually have a full size bed because that's what we had, but you can fit a queen. It has a door, which actually we don't have the door in. It was just like a little sliding door. That's out. We just have a curtain. And then the middle, we have a couch, the kitchen, and then a little dining table that folds down into a bed. That's where our son sleeps in his pack and play. He's 2. He'll be out of the pack and play. I don't even know if he'll make it this whole next year, but we have bunks in the back. Our daughter sleeps on the top bunk, and then the bottom bunk is just empty. And then there's actually another table back there that does fold into another bed. But eventually our son, probably this year, will just be on that bottom bunk back there with her, and we will see how it goes with them two sleeping in the same room in beds. They sleep in the same room when Decker's in a pack and play, when we're traveling and stuff, if we're at a hotel, him in a pack and play with the slumber pod tent, blackout tent over that, Briar in her own bed, and then Danny and I in our bed, and things work out just fine. So not really worried about that, but it'll happen eventually. And so just way more family friendly. The ease of setup, just pulling up, not having bump outs is nice because you don't have to worry about getting back home and bumping those out to let them dry and all that stuff. But we had a pop-up camper for 2 years. And even that is more similar to the tent, where every morning, if we left in the morning, there was always condensation on the canvas, and you have to set that back up when you get home to let it dry out so you don't get mold and mildew. And so the pop-up is nice because it does give you a little bit better shelter than a tent. They're very comfortable. We did 2 years with Briar, our daughter. And then when our son was born, we went to the bigger RV. If you have older kids, maybe the pop-up is really all you need. And that's a nice entry level way, price wise. You can get used pop-ups. Like we had bought ours for a couple $1,000s, and we actually sold it for more than that. So it was nice when we did a little remodel on it, touched, painted things, put in different flooring, and we made it really nice. Now, let's go to the disadvantages of the RV life. Initial cost, right? And ongoing cost. Obviously, a tent, $100 or $200 or even a $400 tent, way less expensive than even a pop-up camper or a bigger RV, where you're starting to get into the thousands, tens of thousands. If you're really going all in, you could spend 70 to 150,000 really quick with an RV or a travel trailer, fifth wheel, whatever it is. You can spend money quick with these things. The maintenance is a big one. You got to think about tires, wheel bearings. You're dealing with water lines. There's issues that can go on. You now have appliances. You have a toilet. You have black and gray water tanks. There's maintenance with all of this stuff. There is of things if you're in the northern climates. So different things that you got to think about. You need insurance, higher gas prices higher price of fuel because your fuel economy is going to go down. So you're not getting the mileage that you would normally get. Number 2 disadvantage there is limited access to remote locations. You're not going to be able to throw it. You can't just pull a camper anywhere you want. Can you get into some pretty remote areas on some DNR roads or backcountry roads or logging roads and get into a wilderness area or a backcountry area? Yeah, you can. You for sure can. But you're not going to be walking in and then setting up camp, obviously. So you're limited on that. And but you can do that. And when you do that, and you don't have the hookups, RVers call it boondocking. It's just where they basically set up and they're using it as a place to sleep. They don't have electric, or maybe they're bringing a generator and they do have electric, and then they do have some water because they have a water tank. So the boondocking thing, it could be like some luxury remote camping if you're up in national forest off some dirt road. It can be a nice way to do things. Done that in northern Minnesota. That's people do it all the time, really. Maybe not all the time, but people do it. 3, I guess, the environmental impact. If you're worried about that, it has a bigger footprint than tent camping. I'll leave it at that. Parking and maneuvering is a disadvantage, right? Parking, driving, maneuvering, you're now towing maybe a 20, 30-foot camper, sometimes up to a 44-foot camper. If you have a fifth wheel or whatever you're camping, they can get pretty big. And now you're towing it. And so if you don't have experience towing, that's a challenge because you still want to be safe and safe to others on the road. Backing in can take some practice and some skill, even with a little pop-up camper. Sometimes I feel like the pop-up camper was harder to back than our bigger camper. That's just me. I don't know if that's true. I'd have to do a side-by-side. But sometimes you're in crowded areas, narrow roads. It can get nerve-wracking. People just set up, crack a beer, and watch people back their campers in. It's always good entertainment. So, number 5, disadvantage, your dependency on infrastructure, right? RV camping often relies on access to amenities like electricity, water, waste disposal facilities, or your sewer hookups, which limits your options in the remote or more primitive areas. You're not going to have those things unless you are bringing in a generator. And they do make generators that are pretty quiet these days. There's some nice ones out there. But again, then you're forking out money and gas and fuel to keep that running when you want it. So that kind of sums up. It's really going to depend on what type of trip you're going to go on, the advantages and disadvantages of tent camping, RV camping. We do both. For example, I bring my daughter tent camping. We drive up to our site. So it's like car tent camping, right? Drive up to our site. We set up a bigger tent. We have some of that, a little bit more space. I have a truck, so more room for gear and storage, and everything's in totes, whatever. But it's a little more. You're always outside. There's no escape really, other than to go into the truck or into the camper or into the tent rather. But I've done a couple trips with her now. I want introduce them to tent camping, but we also have the RV and we go on family camping trips, which is when we have all 4 of us, we're taking the travel trailer. And it makes for a really good experience with the whole family. And then I also go on trips to the Boundary Waters and wilderness areas and the dispersed and wilderness camping, where it's the small tent, camp on the back, portaging, canoeing with everything you got, the food, everything, right? So there's all sorts of camping scenarios you could go through, and you just have to figure out which one is for you. And so, with that said, who should tent camp and who should RV camp? The people who should tent camp, generally, nature enthusiasts, someone who enjoys that deeper connection with nature. They like that raw outdoor experience. Those who appreciate waking up to natural sounds like birds chirping because they will be loud, leaves rustling, people who don't mind waking up at night and hearing a critter walking by their tent because a squirrel at 2 a.m. sounds huge, okay? Also for the people who are budget conscious. They're looking for a cost-effective way to enjoy the outdoors without a high initial investment or that ongoing maintenance, or maybe they just don't have a vehicle to tow a camper or even a pop-up camper, right? So those people, you're not going to go buy a camper and then buy a new vehicle so you can tow the camper. but you could do that. That's an option. Adventure seekers, people who enjoy the challenge and the flexibility of setting up camp in various terrains, from mountains, beaches, heavily wooded areas, and those who thrive with spontaneity, choosing different camping spots on a whim. Maybe you are on a little hike through the woods, new camping spot each night. Also for the minimalists, the campers who prefer that minimalistic lifestyle, simpler lifestyle, focusing on the essentials only, minimal conveniences. And those who want to disconnect from technology and modern distractions, that's one of the big things. I feel like when you're tent camping, you're like next level disconnected than if you are RV camping. You're just disconnecting a little bit more from modern society and just embracing the essentials that you need for outdoor living. And it is also for solo campers and backpackers, obviously, right? Individuals who camp often alone or in small groups where minimal gear is necessary or needed. It's easier to manage. Hikers, backpackers, you want the lightweight, the portable camping stuff, whether that's, and the ultralighters, they go into even different setups than a tent. A lot of them don't even bring a tent per se, but they have a sleep shelter. It's not always a tent. But there you have it. The people who should RV camp, all right? Comfort seekers, individuals who prioritize comfort, luxury. They value those amenities like a nice bed, a good sleep, the climate control, the AC and the heat. That's a big one. But then they also want to enjoy nature without that compromise, right? So they still get home-like experience that they can go into, but then they can step outside and be camping. It's that hybrid, right? It's really good for families with children, older adults who need a secure and comfortable place to stay. It can make camping more accessible and enjoyable for these age groups and their parents, maybe. And those who want a lot of storage or need a lot of storage, or they want to have their own shower and relax in a more secure environment. Frequent travelers, people who enjoy traveling to multiple destinations on a single trip. And they want that flexibility of basically just towing home with you, right? Going on a big road trip around the United States or something like that, through Canada, wherever it is. It's a really big advantage for that. And then also people with mobility issues, people that might find it difficult with the physical demands that tent camping requires, such as just setting up the tent and sleeping on the ground. Like if you have a mobility issue and physically it's tough to get up and down when you're laying on essentially the ground, and then getting up, that's not fun. That's not going to be fun at all. You're not going to have a good experience. And so then, you go the RV route, right? And then long-term campers. So people who maybe are full-time living in a camper, right? You don't want to full-time live in a tent. Not really. Or just extended vacations, a 2-3 month road trip. That RV is going to be a better solution in general. And then people who appreciate that stable and consistent living space while exploring those various areas that they are on this road trip or this trip with, or maybe it's the snowbirds, as we call them here in Minnesota, the people who are retired or people who just go south for the winter. Maybe they're at a campground down south and they just have a camper there. So that will help you decide what's good, what's going to work for you. Just remember a few tips: research camping locations, know beforehand, consider weather conditions, pack those safety essentials, and know the wildlife before you go. Planning and prepping, it's the big thing. So hopefully that helped you decide, or maybe it just made everything more of a cluster for you. I don't know. But that is tent camping versus RV camping. I do both. I love both. Right now, my favorite is RV camping with the family. But then on the other hand, nothing beats a good wilderness trip. So there you have it. Stay wild. Thank you for sticking around. If you've enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a rating and review. Even one word, it helps a ton. Sincerely appreciate you guys. Thank you all, and we'll see you on the next one. Stay wild.
You've been listening to Untamed, Unbroken, a Lone Pine Adventures original podcast.